Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Living Donors Together program. My name is Cindy Huber. I'm the CEO of the National Kidney Foundation of Wisconsin. This is, I believe, our third Living Donors Together virtual program this year. So tonight we have a very exciting program, I think, and a little bit new twist for maybe some of you in terms of living donation. And you'll hear a little bit more about that. But first, I just want to welcome everyone here. And we have a special guest with us tonight. Andrew Fullerton is from our Washington, D.C. office. And we'll start the evening first with a little update from Andrew, who's in a different time zone than we are. And we want him to be able to get home. And then I'll kind of kick it back to our volunteer co-chairs, Michelle Sherman and Jill Dillon. And then we'll launch into our two guest speakers this evening, who I think bring to us a new perspective on living donation and allow us all to learn more about that as we're advocates in the community, as we encounter individuals that are going to ask us questions about living donation, because as you'll hear from one of our guest speakers, the need for livers and people that are going to need livers is going to only increase in the future. And so all of us as donation advocates need to be advocates on behalf of right now, there's almost 300 people in our state still waiting for livers. So we're very excited, and you'll hear a little bit more about them, etc. So I believe Andrew, we're going to try to have you unmute yourself, and we'll put your slides up. So welcome, Andrew.
Hello, can you hear me?
I think we might have to unmute you, Andrew, so we're working on that.
Keep going. Think that.
Can you hear me now?
Muted. Yeah. I hear it, but I don't hear it.
Yes. Andrew, are you talking at all? If you could.
I am here. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Oh, so we have someone in our office that says they can hear Andrew, but we just can't hear you in this room. So I apologize, Andrew, that we're having some technical difficulties. So you're talking, but we're not hearing you.
Okay. If your colleague would.
We're gonna see what we can do about that.
Is that you?
Andrew is.
Yeah, Cindy, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can. Sorry.
Perfect.
You think we might?
Sorry to be a technical glitch.
Yeah, apologize for that. So
there's always one of another call.
Well, welcome again, and thank you for your patience, everyone. It just seems we always have, just like any day, we have a little bit of technical details. So Andrew has is an advocate for our organization at the national level, and so we asked Andrew tonight if he can talk about one of the initiatives that the National Kidney Foundation is taking leadership for, which is the Living Donor Protection Act. So Andrew, welcome, and thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. No, I appreciate the time. It's actually a very exciting time for us to work on this issue both at the federal and state level, and I'm going to focus my attention primarily on the federal bill. Wisconsin actually has done very well in supporting this compared to many other states. There are currently, as you can see, 3 co-sponsors in the House supporting the bill. However, there are 2 senators and I think it's 5 other Congress people who we'd love to have come on to support this legislation. What it does is, has 2 parts primarily, and the first part is it would prevent life, long-term care, or disability insurance companies from discriminating against a living organ donor. The second part would be it would put into law something that came out as an opinion from the U.S. Department of Labor that FMLA includes organ donation as part of its benefits. We currently have 67 Congresspeople and 15 senators supporting the legislation in Congress. I know my personal goal is to have it at 100 in the House and at least a quarter of the Senate, which is 25, because that's a very strong number to go to the leadership in Congress and say, we have a quarter of Congress supporting this and we're going to get more support as we move forward. Please consider this legislation. And all of our actions have been driven by our advocates in your state. You may have met some of them, people like Mary Ballacher, who have done a lot of great work in conjunction with Cindy and the local office, the affiliate up there, in meeting with legislators, educating them on kidney disease, on the issues and the concerns, the successes that you all have, and what they can be doing to help the community, exposing them to kidney disease and everything that our community faces. And this is one of the things that we're trying to fix through legislation. Now, on the second slide, I wanted to go over 4 basic ways that everyone can engage if you have an interest in working with us to support this legislation by making phone calls to your legislators. And you can go to house.gov or senate.gov, locate your particular congressperson and the 2 senators and call their offices. You can email them. We have a website called advocacy.kidney.org where you can go and write an email to your legislator. And the picture that comes up when you log on is for the Living Donor Protection Act. You can click the email or even tweet Congress buttons, do both, and write your legislators. And I ask you to personalize those because there is a template email in there, but it makes a bigger difference when you take the time to personalize it, add a little bit of your story, and add why this is a concern for you, why you think that they need to support it. Social media. I think most of you probably are on Facebook or on Twitter or some other form of social media. Virtually all of Congress. There's probably a lone single congressperson somewhere out there who is not on Twitter, for example. And many legislators actually run their own Twitter accounts now, especially the younger legislators. So you're reaching them directly, and you're also reaching everyone who reads that congressperson or that senator's Twitter feed. So it can make a huge impact. Everything you tweet, many people see. Makes a huge impact. And of course, one of the things I mentioned earlier is meetings with your legislators. So we have been very successful in these so far, but we only have so many people who are doing these meetings, and we need more people to meet with their legislators, to work with Cindy and myself, to convince the legislators and their staff that they need to sign on to these bills, to teach them in person about kidney disease, and to continue to invite them to events in state so that they continue to meet the community as a whole and see just how big the community is within Wisconsin. So those are the 4 primary ways that you can engage with us. And on the next slide are a couple of links with some information, such as our advocacy resources page on kidney.org, where you can go and we have fact sheets, we have statistics, we have a guide on how to conduct various activities if you want to delve deeper into these 4 ways to interact with your legislators or other methods. There's our Twitter accounts and our blog link. So if you ever want to follow what we're doing, what our advocates are doing. And of course, our email. So if you ever want to reach out to me directly, you are welcome to email me at nkfadvocacy.kidney.org. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I would be happy to answer them. Cindy, if you have any as well.
Talk about this.
Yeah, I had a couple questions, and I don't know if our guests here tonight or any folks online, so feel free. I think we're able to have people unmute themselves and ask those questions or type those in. But what you're seeing now is a copy of a postcard. So actually at our walk and run, which is called the Capital City 5K Run and Walk for Organ Tissue and Eye Donation. It's held every July. Sarah Hinkland, who's a member of our Living Donors Together group, took the lead along with Mary Ballacher, Michelle, and Jill, and we actually had individuals at our walk and run on the reverse side of this postcard actually write a little bit of their personal story, and then those were distributed to the various congressional representatives that were home in August. Over 100 individuals filled those out at the walk and run. So I just want to give a big shout out to our volunteers, to Sarah up in La Crosse, who really kind of led the charge there, but a lot of great grassroots things are going on. A couple questions, though, that are coming up in our minds here, Andrew, in Wisconsin. Recently, there are 2 retirements, 1 resignation, 1 retirement of 2 of our representatives. And also, 2020 is an election year. And then my third, so that was a comment. And then my third question to you is, what is it we could be doing now that Congress is back in Washington? What can we be doing in the next couple of months in terms of the 4 things you outlined? Are there, and do I just do once? Do I just call once? Do I just send 1 email? Can you just highlight a little bit, any thoughts you have about our action in the next 2 months? And what if I made a phone call 6 months ago? Am I off the hook?
So repeated contact is important. You're definitely right in bringing that up. It isn't just 1 email and 1 phone call. It's you contacting them on a semi-regular basis. If you have not heard that they're, say, let's just pull out someone's name, Senator Baldwin has not become a sponsor of the Living Donor Protection Act, you can reach back out by phone or by email and say, I emailed you, 3 months ago, or I called you 3 months ago, and I still haven't seen the senator join as a supporter and co-sponsor. I wanted to find out what she might need to convince her to get on board with the kidney patient community. Meeting with the district staff is also important, even if you can't meet with a senator or Congress people directly. The staff in the district office are the ones who help make the policy decisions in the office. They make the recommendations. They're the ones who talk directly with many of the constituents and take the pulse of what the voters want. They're also the people who work directly with the constituents to solve the problems of their constituents. So, for example, if someone calls in with a problem, let's use an example like this, they've been discriminated against by their life insurance company. One case in Colorado was a woman donated, and she was dropped by her life insurance company when she reported that she donated, which is what she thought she should do as a courtesy to them. She could call her congressperson with a complaint about this and see if they can't help her out. As a case in point, some of you may have called them about passport issues in the past and try to get them to expedite the passport if you're traveling overseas. But the caseworkers in the district office are the ones who do this kind of work, and educating them about kidney disease and that Cindy and her staff, you and others are there to help them serve the community, building that relationship with them, and then using that relationship that you've built to bring them to meet others. That could be getting them to tour a local transplant center, a dialysis clinic. That could be bringing them to an NKF event like a walk or a gala or a kidney screening or something of that nature. Cindy can always provide you with opportunities. But it's about developing a relationship with your legislators over time, and hopefully, again, if you're utilizing social media, being out there where others can see you talking about these issues and spreading awareness among their population of supporters.
So Andrew, tonight we're focusing a lot on learning more about another important aspect of living donation in our state, and that's living liver donation. Does the Living Donor Protection Act, should advocates of living liver donation be joining in raising their voices too? Does the act protect all potential living donors?
It protects everyone who can donate as a living organ donor, so liver would be included in that.
So raising, so as we in the community too might learn about someone that might need a liver, is a liver recipient, etc. Just because we're the Kidney Foundation, they should still raise their voices and add to the conversation, correct?
Yes, they definitely should. And as I said, for example, if you want to email, as someone who is interested or has donated a liver, you can go and alter our template to reflect that. Because this will affect every person in the country who can donate. And this is something that I alluded to it earlier, that some advocates have actually gotten engaged in at the state level as well. And I think there's now 12 states that have passed versions of this legislation in their states because they wanted to show their support for the community. And that helps us at the federal level as well.
And just what is there, does kind of this effort expire, at the end of the year? Is it kind of like milk and we have to toss it away? Or do we just keep hammering away at this to, keep this moving forward? Can you just talk for maybe a very minute about that? So our efforts are needed and kind of we're not giving up. Is that correct?
We are not giving up. So we are going to continue pushing for this legislation until the end of 2020. It is at December 31st of next year. The legislation dies in Congress if it isn't passed, and we have to start all over again, which is something we don't want to do. We've got such momentum. So I mentioned we have 67 House sponsors and 15 in the Senate. We had 78 last Congress. So a Congress is 2 years. So we almost have as many in less than a year, 3/4 of a year, as we did in 2 years supporting this legislation. And we didn't have a Senate bill last year. So we are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were last Congress. And that is, I think, very motivating, and it should be motivating for everyone to want to take action to keep that momentum going forward. And if we can get enough people to sponsor this legislation in Congress, we'll see it move. And if we can get it moving at least in one house, there is a significant chance it'll pass both.
Thank you, Andrew. I don't know if there are any other questions, if we're seeing any online, or if even I don't want to put our guests on the spot here, but hopefully we're going to twist their arms here to go back in the circles that they travel in, and hopefully we can have the liver community join our efforts there. Andrew, thank you very much. I know you have stayed late to join us. We really appreciate that. just want to give you our gratitude on behalf of the patients here in Wisconsin. 1,500 are waiting for kidneys, almost 300 are waiting for livers alone in our state. So please know that we appreciate everything that you're doing on behalf of all of those patients and families in Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Let me leave you two parting thoughts. The first being, just an example, on Twitter, it takes less than 30, or social media in general, it takes less than 30 messages in a month for a legislator to put an issue front and center on their radar. I bet all of you have 30 friends who have social media accounts. And the other thing I want to mention is I've heard this a lot from our advocates. The reason why many legislators have not jumped on board with as co-sponsors is because they haven't heard from their constituents. And the minute they have their office, whether it's them or their staff, meet with constituents who care enough to talk to them about these issues, they become co-sponsors. That was the thing they were waiting for. They don't want to talk to me, they want to talk to you, and they want to hear from you. So that was the incentive for them to become supporters. So please, please meet with them, meet with their staff, and reach out to their offices through electronic media.
Well, those are good parting comments. So thank you again for joining us tonight, Andrew.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And if anyone needs me, please feel free to email me or contact me through Cindy.
Great. Well, now we're moving into the part of our program that I always think is very exciting. So our co-chairs, Michelle and Jill, are always an inspiration, as well as Sarah Hinklin, and to talk about how do we want to empower those of us in the state as advocates to be knowledgeable as we're out in the community. So I'm going to turn it over right now and introduce and say thank you first to Michelle Sherman, who's here with us at the NKFW office, just to talk a little bit about Living Donors Together as we fire up the presentation for our speakers. But Michelle, we didn't really get, we kind of whipped through your picture at the beginning. So I'll just kind of turn it over to you and let you introduce yourself to the group as we kind of make some transitions here on the computer.
Wonderful, absolutely. Hello everyone, this is Michelle Sherman. I am a living kidney donor. I just celebrated 5 years as being a living kidney donor. My transplant team is at Froedtert Hospital, and my living kidney recipient is doing very well. What I absolutely love when people learn that I have donated an organ is the question of how is your recipient doing, and the impact that this decision has made not only on his life but in the lives of his family, his coworkers, his friends. My living recipient is my best friend's father, and he is a consultant in the aviation industry amongst many other wonderful things, but he is a leader for the EAA. And this year I wasn't able to be at the Capital City Run and Walk because I was with him celebrating this milestone anniversary. But what I wanted to share about that is one of his fellow pilots came up to me and was just so thankful and so appreciative and said, without your choice, without that consideration, without that gift, our lives would be very different. And it gets me just choked up thinking about it because you don't realize that impact of your gift on others and that effect that it has. So this group and this community that we have gathered, and I'm gonna be able to pass it over to my fellow co-chair and partner in crime in all of this, Jill Dillon, in just a moment. But this effort was really to gather and to educate and to inspire and to advocate. And so I'm thrilled that we are now 2 years into this effort, and we've got momentum in our Facebook group and lots of posts and lots of activities happening and lots of gatherings happening. So it's always great to hear how we're able to connect, whether it's at a National Kidney Foundation event or on our own in the community. So I want to thank everybody for being a part of this effort. And I definitely want Jill to be able to give a shout out because she has a great story to share as well. So Jill, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. My husband's not home and he usually sets up my headset. So I'm Jill Dillon, and happy kidney anniversary to you, Michelle. I am just over 8 years that I donated in 2011, and actually just had my creatinine and my GFR numbers done today. They still look fantastic. So my recipient also is doing great. So we are both very thankful for donation in general, and thankful for all of you who have joined us, and thankful for everybody that has joined us on the Living Donors Together page on the Facebook page. And these webinars so far have been going very well. And boy, I'm got to tell you, I've been learning something new every time. So, and I'm actually just really super excited to hear tonight about liver donations. So, Michelle, I'm going to put it right back to you so you can go ahead and introduce the speakers.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jill. The program tonight is very special to us and to Cindy. As we were looking at the opportunities to connect with a lot of people in our community that would be absolutely fabulous to share their stories. It was really important for us, just that inclusivity and that understanding of the other organs and the other considerations being made across the living organ donation space. So we wanted to cross promote, to share, and to learn more. So tonight we are thrilled to have two very special guests with us this evening, both from Froedtert, and have very special stories to share. So Cami Loritz is an RN. She works in the transplant ICU at Froedtert, but she is also a living liver donor, and a very recent living donor. As we're celebrating 5 and 8 years, Jill, Cami donated on May 14th of this year. So we are super excited you're here and can't wait to hear your story. We also have her living liver transplant coordinator in the house with us tonight, Shannon Sova, and Shannon is also an RN at Froedtert. And so Shannon's going to kick off the presentation with more information about liver donation and living liver donation.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. So I'm just going to do a brief presentation. I do need to thank the director of our program, Dr. Johnny Hong, for the slides and for helping me prepare for tonight. So I'm just going to kind of kick off here. This is a brief outline of what I'm going to talk about, what Froedtert has to offer from a transplant perspective for living donation, the recipients, the evaluation, operation, and obviously what people want to know, risks and complications. So like kidney donation, liver as well has a two-team approach. Everything is confidential from the donation perspective. So the recipients have their own team as well as the living donor. The teams consist of social workers, psychologists, hepatologists, which are the liver medical doctors. We have a specifically trained anesthesiologist for going through this very large operation, which I'll talk about in a minute. The unique thing for living donation to have a transplant center that does this is you need to have two surgeons, that are trained to do it, and we have 3. Our living donor program at Froedtert Hospital was certified by UNOS, the United Network for Organ Sharing, in February of 2013 after Dr. Hong came aboard. And so we've done a lot of recruitment and reorganization to be able to support this very resource-intensive team. So goals of transplantation, obviously, is to extend life, improve quality of life, treat organ failure. These pictures on here, you can see the child and the adult and organ failure for liver. So this little child here now on the right is at her wedding day. And the gentleman on the bottom is then on the right, returned back to work. So it does show that living donation works and transplantation works. So very briefly, just to kind of cover how transplant works for liver, we don't have devices like dialysis to support people who need organs. And so we have to go by a scoring system, and we have to go by how severe their illnesses are. And so we use this scoring system called the MELD score or PELD score. Just very briefly, just lab values is how people get listed. And sometimes it doesn't reflect the severity of their illness. And so you can see on this slide here the increasing demands for organs. So we have probably in the whole United States about 17,000-ish people listed for a liver transplant. And in the US, we only do about 7,000 transplants a year. So there is a very large gap of about 10,000 people waiting for a liver. And of those, probably every year about 3,000 people will pass away waiting for a transplant. So next here, a little bit more of a kind of graphic slide, but this goes over the options that a transplant candidate has, an adult or a child. And so at our center, we can offer 3 different ways for people to get transplanted. We can offer them a whole organ from a deceased person. We can, with our surgical expertise, offer someone a partial graft. And we did this the first in the state in 2014, where we split a liver inside of someone, a deceased person, and gave part of that graft to an adult, and then gave that other part to a child, saving 2 lives with 1 organ. And then we also offer living donation from adult to an adult and an adult to a child. So an adult to an adult transplant for living donation is more complicated than it is to a child. We would need to take 60% of the organ to do adult to an adult, and a child we take anywhere from 20 to 30%. And as you can see on the slide, we don't cross over main vessels when we do an adult to a child, making it slightly less risky. This here shows you the volumes, which haven't really changed too much since 2006 when this data was pulled, but it shows you out of almost 7,000 transplants we do a year, 223-ish are adult to an adult, and even less than that for living donation for adult to child is about 60 a year. And those numbers really haven't changed too much. So living donation from a liver perspective is really not out there as much as something that people can do. This shows you the survival rate for a whole graft, a split graft, or a living donor. Really, the outcomes are the same. So it doesn't matter where you get the organ from. People live a very long time and do very well after organ transplantation. This is just an advocacy for our live donors of who we call upon to be a donor. They need to be competent and willing and to donate free of coercion. We inform them of the risks and the benefits. We never call upon a donor to donate in hopeless situations. And we have a very big team that can go through the risks and benefits for donation for our patients. This slide here goes over the very long evaluation process of what it takes to be a donor, which I can let Cami talk about a little bit more in detail if she wants to, but it's a lot of medical tests and meetings with doctors and team members before we can approve someone to be a donor. The biggest thing really is doing scans to make sure that someone can be a donor. Operation for a donor for liver, much different than kidney. It is an open abdominal procedure. So we do not do this laparoscopic. It is not safe to do it laparoscopic because the liver is a very vascular organ. It's tucked up underneath your rib cage, as you can see in the picture. So it is a very large incision, as you can see on the photo on the right. This is just a picture of what the graft will look like in the recipient, the part that it's connected to. The part that they get grows with them for their life. So if you give it to a child, it will continue to grow with them as their needs are met as they continue to grow. And then the part that's left in the donor, the part that's gone doesn't grow back, but the part that's left hypertrophies or grows bigger with them. The regeneration process is about 90% complete at 3 months. So there's a lot of regeneration that happens. And then really it takes the full year for the rest of it to grow back. Now, to do living donation, why it's so different than kidney, you have 2 kidneys, you only have 1 liver. And so your liver has 8 different segments. Each one is fed by an artery, a vein, and a biliary system, a bile duct. So each one can grow on its own if the anatomy is correct, but not everyone's anatomy is different. And so these brief slides here, your hepatic artery, your portal vein, and your bile duct are different for everybody. So every time someone comes forward to be a donor, their anatomy may not match their potential recipient. So we turn down a lot of people because they just can't donate to certain people because the anatomy is different. So usually it's 1 out of maybe 10 or 12 people that we scan could potentially move on to the next step. Post-operative care, so after the donation is done, these are the team members that take care of the donor, all the transplant surgeons, anesthesiologists, the critical care intensivists, the transplant ICU, and then the regular floor. So after the surgery is done, which takes about 6 to 8 hours long to do the donation surgery, our donors are in the ICU. They're in the ICU for a few days, sometimes even longer, because we really pay close attention to the liver function and make sure that it is returning and growing, and then very vigilant on the narcotic administration because that's what our liver does. So we do not want to over medicate, since the liver does that process for us and it filters all those things through it. And so we're very vigilant on monitoring that, and we need our donors to have that one-on-one care in the ICU. And then after usually 5 days or so, depending on what's going on, then we would move them to a regular floor, and then they're out of the hospital, usually at about a week to 10 days, depending on how their pain is progressing. Post-operative care, we see them at the 2-week mark, 4 weeks, 3 months, 6 months, and then every 6 months for 2 years, we would like to follow our donors. Risks and complications. Overall, the risk and complication rate when you're talking adult to an adult, this is where all this data came from, a 10-year study that was done out of UCLA. Overall complication rate is 38%. Sounds like a very big number, and it is. This complication rate really is from very, very small, from an IV being infiltrated, to a larger complication like bleeding or a bile leak or a hernia or liver failure itself. Those are 20%. Keep in mind there are a lot less numbers when we're doing an adult to a child donation. Post-op donation depression is very real. Up to 4% of our patients can feel that effect. We do uncover silent diseases like diabetes and other things, which then people cannot donate. So then they have to add that on to pre-existing conditions and health insurance and life insurance issues as well. We do, as a center, make sure that our patients have health and life insurance. You don't need it to be a donor, but we do, as part of our evaluation process, try and make sure that those things are in place, because as we talked about and heard before, some people do have difficulty getting life insurance after that as well. These are the lists of all the potential complications that can happen. The ones in yellow are specifically related to donation for your liver. The other ones are just general complications from going through surgery. You can have a sore throat all the way up into bile leaks and strictures from the living donation. People always ask, have there been any donor deaths? And there have. They have been adult to an adult donor deaths. It has been many years. None have happened at Froedtert Hospital. The incidence and risk of it is 0.2 to 0.5%, very low. But when it does happen to you and your family, it is real, and it's 100%. So it's something that we want to make sure people understand has happened. But nothing related to the specific liver surgery in regards to these incidences. So just really overall, the advantages fall a lot on the recipient, disadvantages to the donor with all of the risks, but it's a balancing act for us to make sure everyone is safe. And so really our Froedtert program just is approved through UNOS. We have a very big multidisciplinary team, like it is for kidney as well, to work up someone who needs a liver, and there's excellent outcomes for us at Froedtert Hospital, 100% outcomes on both ends for the recipients and the donors. And so that's all I have for mine, and I'll turn it over to Cami, who can talk about her experience.
All right. Hi, like Michelle said, my name is Cami. I worked very closely with Shannon to go through this living liver donation, so thank you to her and Dr. Hong and the whole transplant team at Froedtert for making this possible. So I am actually a nurse in the transplant ICU at Froedtert, and what I commonly see with my patient population is that our recipients are adult recipients who have some kind of hepatic failure or illness or disease where they can only receive full organs from deceased donors. So just the concept that 2 people could go into living this donation and 2 people could come out of it was very inspirational for me. I had caught my attention on social media posts, so I definitely promote that about a child that needed a liver. So I ended up going through the workup process at the end of March of this year. It was about 2 days of scans that include chest x-rays, MRIs, lots of lab work, CT scans, consults with social work, with the psychologist. I met with a living donor advocate, and it's just all very centered around you as the donor, making sure that you feel comfortable, that you feel safe, and that this is something that you want to go through. So ultimately, after the testing, I was cleared to donate. Like Shannon was saying, not many people that go through the testing, or not many people step forward in the first place, but then those that do, only about 15% are actually cleared to donate based off of like your anatomy, your vasculature, your past medical history, all of that. So after I was cleared to donate, we were going to progress and set me up with a child that is currently on the transplant list. So as that was underway, less than a week went by and I received a phone call from Shannon that they actually had a 7-year-old child who was in acute liver failure, which is definitely different than chronic liver failure. With chronic liver failure, you have time, you can go home, you can live. You will need a transplant at some point, but time is a little bit more on your side. With acute liver failure, it is a very time-sensitive topic. Depending on the child's or the person's condition, they can deteriorate very quickly, like within hours to days to weeks. So Shannon called me and told me about Braden, who you can see on the screen here. He's a 7-year-old boy who went into acute liver failure at the end of April, I believe. Yes, April 26th, he was admitted. So his parents noticed that he had like yellowing of his eyes and he was complaining of abdominal pain and had diarrhea at school that day. So they brought him in Green Bay and they transferred him to Children's Hospital that same night. And I believe he was at Froedtert for about a week. They did testing, they continued to monitor him, they did a biopsy, and then realized that he would definitely need a transplant. So they listed him at the top, and I was already registered to donate, and I actually matched him. So Shannon called me and asked if I would be willing to donate that week instead of setting up this donation later on within, the month or so. So I said yes. So she called me on a Friday and the transplant happened that next Tuesday. So it unfolded pretty quickly. Braden's situation was definitely time sensitive, as Shannon was explaining before, the score that we give people. Braden had a PELD score of 41, which is extremely high. So sooner than later, definitely with him. So I did not meet Braden or his family before the transplant. It just went underway. I was admitted the night before, and then Tuesday morning the transplant happened. I guess I can explain how I felt if you really want me to. I woke up in the ICU. I was extubated. I did not have the breathing tube in. It wasn't like straight incisional pain that I felt. It was just like feeling like garbage, like from the top of my head, like down to my toes. I did not want to be awake yet. The pain management, like Shannon touched upon, they have to be very careful with narcotic administration because your liver is responsible for filtering that. So they did what they could. I was getting fentanyl pushes every hour, which would kind of just make me fall asleep. And then I would slow down my breathing a little bit, so then they would wake me up. So it was a vicious cycle of that, fentanyl every hour, falling asleep, getting forced to be awake for, I believe, the first night or day and a half, I would say. So after that, they added dilaudid PCA, which helped a little bit, but I would get the dilaudid and then I would fall asleep so that I wouldn't push the button again to get it again. So then I would wake up like an hour later in just even more pain than I had pushed it before. So there's a team at Froedtert called the FRAPS team that they consulted as a pain management team. They were super helpful. So they got IV Tylenol, ketamine, and then they'll do a lot of PCA on board. And that was like really the game changer for me. After that, it didn't make me drowsy. It actually kind of like gave me a little bit of energy. It made me want to get up and get out of bed and walk, which was something that they make you do very, very quickly. The morning after my transplant, they got me standing and sitting at the side of the bed. And then it just kind of unfolded day by day there. I got my nasogastric tube taken out on day 3. My Foley catheter came out on day 4. I believe I started eating for the first time on day 5. That didn't go very well, so I stopped and then tried again on day 7. But it was pretty much just getting up and getting out of bed, remaining active is definitely helpful for the bowels, especially if you're on that much pain medication. And then on day 9, I was discharged from the ICU. I stayed in the ICU the whole time. I feel like I got special treatment because I work there. But my coworkers were fantastic. They did such a good job taking care of me, helping me, maintain privacy while I was there and just doing their diligence of getting me up and helping me manage my pain. On day 7, I got to meet Braden's parents. So they were over at Children's Hospital. Braden had still gone back to the OR that day for closure. So I didn't see him, but I saw his parents, which was just a very surreal experience. Obviously, they're extremely thankful, and they have a hard time expressing that because, you can only say thank you so much, but they're awesome people, and I'm just really thankful that they can have their little boy back. And then I met Braden about a week or so after I was discharged, so I came back for a follow-up appointment. He was still in the hospital, so that was really fun to see him. He, at that point, didn't really, grasp the whole concept. But he was very shy at first, but then once you get him going talking about little boy things, something a 7-year-old would actually be excited about, you couldn't get him to stop talking. He was really cute. So I've remained in contact with their family. We just had dinner last week for Braden's brother's birthday. We obviously did these family photos together. So it just kind of goes to show I don't know, whether you want it or not, there's a bond there. Braden's doing absolutely fantastic. He started school this fall and is really excited to be back. He tells me that he doesn't mind homework, and he's so happy that he can finally be around his friends again because he was secluded for a while. But he's doing awesome. He's ready to start wrestling again come this winter, which slowly, but yeah, they're clearing him every time he goes for more and more things. So all good things. I know.
Such a sweet story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, you having that medical experience and understanding of the need and the risks, it's a very interesting situation for yourself. I'm going to just jump in and ask a quick question on that note. What additional considerations did you have having the medical insights and intels that you have?
Yeah, so at FERT, I mean, I don't know if a lot of people say oh, being a transplant ICU nurse, wouldn't it be even more concerning for you to go through this? And I just felt like I didn't have to struggle with the risk of the unknown. I knew what to expect. I totally trusted my coworkers and the transplant team. I've seen them do amazing things. I've seen them turn horrible situations around so quickly. So just me being a healthy individual, I really wasn't concerned in that sense. My biggest concern was if it would get called off for some reason, on Braden's end. So as a nurse now, just kind of puts into perspective, the patient's perspective, what pain actually does really feel like. It is a real thing. It should be acknowledged always. And like I said before, just the diligence that my coworkers put into making sure that I was safe and that I was okay and that I was going to exceed and get discharged as soon as I could. So I felt like I benefited from knowing the baseline, and how things go, just because there was really no fear of the unknown there. I kind of knew what to expect. So that was nice.
Wonderful. And one more question before you jump to those online questions, because I see them coming in. People are interested. People have their own questions. I see in the photo a little bit there, your incisions. Can Can you just describe where they are and
Yeah,
what
so
they look like?
yes, we call it a Mercedes incision because it looks like the Mercedes-Benz symbol. So I've seen different ones on other recipients and donors. I think it just depends on the surgeon themselves or your anatomy. But it goes like right from your like xiphoid process, or your breastbone, like all the way down to right above your belly button, and then splits down both sides. So in Braden's situation, his looks a little bit more gnarly than mine does, just because he was sick. So he was down in the OR. They try and close you super quick, get you back upstairs, get all your labs drawn, get you hooked up to the monitors, start like with reversing the sedation. So they closed him super quickly. Me, on the other hand, I had awesome Dr. Batty close me, who's one of my coworkers. So I, again, got special treatment there. But he did 2 layers of subcute stitches, and then he glued it and then just did steri strips over the top of it. So my incision looks really good, actually.
Well, I think his is different too, because he's got the big bloated belly.
He does, yes.
That too, and they have multiple take-back surgeries, so the recipients is always going to be a little bit different because they're not healthy.
Yeah.
Right, and hers is, and she's healthy.
So one of the I don't know if you can see that question, but we have a question from someone online.
Yes. So we have a question from Sarah. Hello, Sarah. This question's for Cami. What was it like being a patient on the unit where you work? Thank you, Sarah. You and I were thinking the exact same thing. And then, do you think it has affected the way you see and treat your patients? And thank you for your brave choice to be a living liver donor.
Thank you, Sarah. So the first question, being a patient on my own unit, that was like, honest, out of the whole thing, my biggest concern. I took care of the things that I could take care of. I gave myself my own enema and I took out my own Foley. So they allowed me the right to do that. But my coworkers were so good at like maintaining my privacy. The first 3 days, I honestly don't even really remember. And I just know like from my parents and from pictures and stuff that like the door was closed, you know, the lights were out. People didn't really come in, you know, just to see me. My privacy was totally maintained, so that was really nice. And like I said, I had total trust in my coworkers, so I really didn't feel like I needed to worry about like what my lab values were or what drips I was on or what electrolytes I was getting. It just, I was able to focus on myself and just rest and completely leave it in their hands. I would rather be on the other end of it as a nurse than the patient, but it was okay for the time being.
They never said saving lives was going to be
exactly,
easy, right?
Yeah.
We on our end too made sure, which she doesn't know about, is that we went to all of the nurses and the charge nurses to make sure that yes, this is very exciting and it's one of your coworkers, but please, if you're not the nurse taking care of her, to let her rest. And so we took care of those things on that end because it can be very exciting to see your friend and your coworker do that, and you want to help. We needed to make sure that she rested.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that and felt that, and so did my family too. So, and then now being a nurse after being a patient, I hope I was a good nurse before. I think I am better now. Definitely like the little things, just to know that like to turn the lights out at night, close the door, make sure there's not any alarms like going off that you're not acknowledging. Like allowing your patient to sleep at night, acknowledging that pain is a real thing, and knowing that you have resources within the hospital to use. Like if the doctors or whoever you're working with that night like doesn't have an answer, not an answer, but doesn't have an idea or a plan. Kind of with mine, the transplant team had a good idea what they wanted to do, but then they got the pain management team involved as well. So it was just like that working together, using the resources that you have, just kind of opened my eyes to treating the person like definitely holistically, not just like being a tasky nurse with them, but like actually looking at what they need. So yeah, I hope it made me a better nurse.
Jill has a question for you. She's going to ask herself.
Sure. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Shannon. Hi, Cami.
Hello.
Cami, thank you so much for telling your story. What a fantastic story. And these pictures, I love these pictures. And your shirts, I love those. Those are awesome. And of course, his little chalkboard there. Those are great. So congratulations and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Shannon, my question is for you, and actually really, Cami, maybe you know this as well, but my nephew has biliary atresia, and he's 17 now. He's been fortunate enough to get by with the procedure, you know, that he had when he was a baby, and fortunately so far has not needed a liver, but someday very likely will. My other health issue is that I'm a 5-year cancer survivor, cervical cancer, as of next week, and I'm curious if that eliminates me as a living liver donor should he need one someday.
You're 5 years out from the cancer?
5 years out as of next week, yep.
Initially, no, but we would probably run additional tests to make sure, but initially, no. That, like, just that one piece, no.
Great, that's good to know. And I also don't know if you know, but Forbes magazine came out with the best places to work in Wisconsin, and Froedtert Hospital was #1 as of last week.
It's a pretty awesome place to work.
Just thought I'd share that with you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about the eligibility? Because I'm not sure in terms of, like, if I have diabetes, or some of those things that sometimes are different, or my BMI. You know, a lot of times in the kidney world, people do hear that as it relates to, you know, even their eligibility to come forward as a donor. Could you just talk a little bit more about some of the things that here in Wisconsin, we have healthy BMIs and, you know, those kinds of, just a little bit more about that, because I think Jill brings up an interesting point about cancer. But I don't know that I understood maybe some of that initial thing. So if somebody just calls you up, I assume you ask a few of those basic things, or
we do a full phone screen. So if you want to be a donor at Froedtert Hospital, we have a website that has like an online application. You can 2 years ago was our first anonymous one, so you can be an anonymous donor to an adult or to a child. You can specify, or you can call. And so when we get that information, what we do is on the form and on the website has specific age ranges that we're looking for. So you have to be between the ages of 18 and really under 50, and if it's for a child, 40 or under, ideally. BMI is ideal to be 25 or under. And so the reason for that is as we get older, your liver, it doesn't ever stop the regeneration process, but it slows down. And so the healthier our BMI is, the higher risk we are of getting fatty liver disease on our own. So that could put the donor at risk for having liver issues if we would take part of it. So the BMI comes into effect, your age, you have to have a matching blood type. Really, you cannot have any other pre-existing conditions. You can't have high blood pressure. You could potentially have a little bit if it's not managed by anything, if we're talking adult to an adult. No diabetes, no heart issues, no lung issues. Previous surgeries are fine, depending on what it is. And so we really dive in and do a full, complete phone screen of your medical and your surgical history.
I have a question. This is Michelle again. So on the kidney side at Froedtert, they have the peer mentor program. So I'm a living kidney donor peer mentor. Do you have something similar on the liver side?
Yeah, we do. We have that. I don't know if you've gone through it yet or if you plan on doing it, but we do have a mentorship program for recipients and then for donors as well. I think we might have 1 or 2 that have gone through the mentorship program. We don't have the championship program like I think they do at Froedtert. They have the kidney champions. We don't have that yet up and running at Froedtert. So that's things that we're trying to look into to see how we can get the word out about living donation for liver.
Excellent. And like us on the living kidney side, we have the National Kidney Foundation to partner with. What resources do you find of value on the liver side?
Honestly, not too much. So it's definitely a lot of new platforms we're trying to find to bring the awareness out there. And so we're trying to start things on our own and get the word out. Anonymous living donation is very rare. I think there's maybe been 5 in the US or so before we did Cami, and then another donor 2 years prior to, and there aren't a lot of centers that do it just because of the high risk nature of the procedure. So awareness is huge of what we're trying to say that we do at Froedtert, and we do anonymous liver donation. So it's something that we're working on. So if anyone has any ideas.
And I just want to touch on that too. A lot of people were like, well, how could you donate to him if you're not related? I know with kidneys, having a family member do it, they do the HLA matching, which is specific to that. That's not the case with the liver. So your liver makes your own antibodies. So when you put one in there, you're not really at risk as much for the kidney as rejecting it because you're creating your own. So with this altruistic or this anonymous donation, it really boils down to just your blood type and like your anatomy and your vasculature and your size. So like Braden had a ton of family members that were willing to step forward as well. And even though they are family members, they just anatomically or size-wise did not match him. So I just wanted to touch on that it doesn't have to be that relation to donate to somebody.
And the other question I have, just comparing kidneys and livers, you know, kidneys have like the paired exchange or the kidney registry. Yeah. Is there anything similar in the liver world?
No, because anonymous donation is so rare and so new. I mean, just here in general. So there are a lot of other centers. Maybe there's 1 or 2 other centers throughout the US that does it. I know it's more common. It's kind of reversed when you look at different countries. So like Asian countries, their living donation population is 80 to 90% of where they get their organs from. And in the US, it's flipped. We do 2% of our transplants for liver or living donation. And so we don't have any of that set up where you can do paired exchange. And I don't know how long that would take. It would be other centers being aware that anonymous living donation is a possibility and taking the risk and building the infrastructure to do it. There's a lot of mental health resources that go into that and your donor advocates. So it's not something that a lot of hospitals will back to do, unfortunately.
Can you go through your stats again at Froedtert and then the need statewide?
Yeah, so just for living donation or just transplants in general?
Liver transplants
in general. So at Froedtert Hospital for Adult, we have about, our list is a little over 100 waiting. Children's Hospital right now, I believe they're at a list of, I want to say maybe 15 or so of children waiting and in need for a liver. Statewide, I think 300, like Cindy had said. And then nationally or so, we're at about 17,000 people waiting. And so there's a very, very large supply and demand, a big gap waiting for livers. But it really is only 2% is living donation. So a very, very small amount accounts for that.
I might put you on the spot here. If you were, if we were writing a brochure about why someone should consider it, so you're talking to just a group of people that, you know, what would you say about just why I would consider becoming a living liver donor to someone I didn't know?
Well, I got to experience it firsthand before I even became a nurse. I didn't mention this before, but my dad donated his kidney to his brother in 2016. So we saw that happen in our family, and it was just, what I would tell people is it's amazing to see a family like in distress and so vulnerable and so helpless to go from that to like complete opposite in obviously an OR time. So I would say the fact that you are a person who has the opportunity to donate, that you went through a workup process and you got cleared and you're healthy enough to share that with somebody. If your life allows it and you're in the position to obviously save somebody else's life, big picture wise, it doesn't really boil down to anything other than that. I mean, yeah, I had other things going on in my life, but I mean, when you think about how desperate Braden's family was and how desperate he was, none of that really matters anymore. So if you just look at the big picture and know that you can give of yourself, and the pain and the discomfort and the not being at work will all go away within a matter of months. You know, you're giving a few months up for a lifetime. So
Shannon, what would you say if you were talking, she wasn't here with you, what would you say like to a group of people about considering living liver donation? What would be your?
I would say to save a life is amazing. I see these children, and mostly I see adults because of my other job is I work up people on the adult side who need transplants, and then I work with them until they get the transplant. So I don't just do living donations. So I get to see the bad with the good, and the living donation is the bright side of my job. And to see people just selflessly come forward and say, I want to help here, I will do this big thing. We need more people like that in the world. And so when you see the kids who get sick and you see it get posted on social media, and you actually see the hundreds of people that call and try and help, I wish that could be for every single person that needs a transplant, because it really does work. It's amazing to see it work. And I wish people knew what your body can do, what your body can recover from. And even though it sounds like this huge, ginormous procedure, and it is, it really does work. And she's back to work. She's functioning. She's a nurse. She's lifting and pulling and pushing patients 4 months after her donation.
Yeah.
It's amazing what your body can do. And if you could get just 1% of the population to come forward and say, I want to donate anything, something, part of your body, you would save so many lives. It works. It really does work.
And for those situations that reach social media like Braden's did and other ones that I've seen before, I just want to encourage people that, like, if you did step forward and that child, when one got transplanted, continue to go through the process, because there are still people waiting. So even if I wasn't able to donate to Braden, I would have, or, I was set up with a different child, I still would have went through it. It doesn't matter who gets it. Obviously, especially if it's altruistic, it doesn't matter who gets it. But if you were willing to get worked up to donate to Braden or to any other child that you saw on social media and it didn't go through with you, but you're still eligible to donate, there's other ones there too that still need it.
There's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you both. This is amazing, and I think it's inspirational to us to add to our knowledge base and our advocacy and our passion for living donation. And we want you to know you can count on us to help promote living liver donation, and whatever we can do to support that, or programs, or educating folks in the community, you can just count on the National Kidney Foundation as a partner. So, and thank you
for having us. Yes.
Coming tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't know if you have any other things, but I want to talk about something exciting for next week and kind of keying off of what Shannon says.
Take it away.
So, John, are we able to put up the next slide? So I just want to call attention to something else we're doing in terms of promoting donation for all organs. And next week is DMV Appreciation Week. And so next week we have a special program that we're doing, and have a living donor, by the way, who is speaking, who used to supervise the Milwaukee DMV office. Her name is Jennifer Holmes. And we'll be talking also about the role the DMV has played over the years since the donor dot first appeared and the anatomical gift first appeared on our driver's license here in Wisconsin. But what's interesting is that program, which is next Tuesday evening, it's our Living Well before and after transplant program. We'll also be offering that with Zoom, but we'll be doing an in-person gathering. And after that program, will be actually anyone that comes to the program in person. We actually have thank you cards that we're going to have people write personal notes of gratitude to the DMVs. As you can, so John is sharing some of the statistics here, but I believe over, was it 53 or 55,000 people every year sign up to be organ, tissue, or eye donors at the DMV. So for many individuals, it's the first place people even hear about donation. And the DMV and the staff throughout the state are very, very proud of their role in terms of what they're doing to save lives. So I would just encourage anybody to, through social media to help us promote. And if you're not able to join us or listen in to learning more about what's going on at the DMV, to do a shout out through your own social media, because they too, just like our speakers here tonight, are saving lives and talked about that. Michelle, Jill, all of you. The DMV plays, they're also our heroes in terms of donation. So that information is on our website, but it is next Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock. For those of you in the Milwaukee area, we will, the address and the location there, but otherwise you can listen online. But Jill and Michelle, I think this is a time in terms of if anyone has anything else.
I just wanted to mention that Donate Life Wisconsin does have cards available specifically to thank your local DMV. I'm sure they could still get you some if anybody wants to contact them. I know I'm stopping by our local DMV next week with a card and some goodies for them as a thank you. They're trying to get as many personal visits as possible out there. So I'm sure that if you contact them, Donate Life Wisconsin, they still have some of those cards available.
Yeah, and those are the cards we're using because we're a Donate Life Wisconsin organization. So yes, we're part of that effort. But thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
And we're adding to the effort. But yes, we're encouraging anyone to write any kind of note. But I think even posting on social media.
Oh, absolutely.
A message. So if you're can't get a card, don't have time to stop, the DMV is not convenient, just do a shout out and a post, and hopefully our Living Donors Together Facebook group, we can get that message out too for people to really spread the word about the DMVs.
Yes, and this is Michelle. Just save the date for our next Living Donor program. Oh, there's a slide for that. Sorry, I jumped ahead. So that is Wednesday, November 20th. Registration opens for those events about a month before, and we start posting about that on the Living Donors page, usually around that same time, getting people to save the date. Please spread the word. This is Living Donors Together of Wisconsin is a statewide initiative, and we are trying to have every living donor in the state of Wisconsin or that is connected to the state of Wisconsin, being whether they live here or they donated here, be a part of our group. So please help us in sharing the message and spreading the word to get involved with Living Donors Together of Wisconsin. And yes, there's the link for our Facebook group. And post your stories, post your pictures, post the fun that's happening. I know this summer there's been a lot of meet and greets and opportunities to catch up and people sharing stories. And it's been great to see how other people, through other people's eyes, the value and importance of living organ donation.
Tonight we did some recordings of this program, and so some of those slides that might have gone a little too quickly, or if you want to revisit those in terms of what Shannon shared, will be posted. I want to give a shout out to John and Merle and Amanda, who are here with us tonight in the office. John and Merle volunteer. Amanda works for the National Kidney Foundation, but it really does take a village to do this, and we really do appreciate their assistance. So we want to again, this is the information about next week's program in terms of, and we invite all of you to join us, and registration is now open for that program. For those of you in the Milwaukee area that come in person, we are serving dinner. So not just snacks, but dinner. So please join us next Tuesday in saying thank you to a salute to our DMV offices throughout the state of Wisconsin. But thank you very much for joining us tonight, and thank you to our two guest speakers.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.